Trust. The ability to trust your team members is one of the most critical aspects of growing an engineering company. In this episode of the Civil Engineering CEO, I have with me Leia Lorelle. Iris is the CEO of Capital Engineering and Consultants, and she's going to talk about trust and how it really means everything when building a company, from hiring, delegating, what technologies to acquire. You have to learn to trust others. Before we jump in, just a quick word from our sponsor for this episode, Big Time.
Oh my God, this is amazing. I love it.
Got it. Wow, Dave, this is amazing. This is really, really cool.
The software is great. I love this program.
These are the real reactions of Big Time customers when they first toured the software. Big Time gives engineering firms the visibility they need to operate more efficiently and maximize profits. From project creation to client payments, Big Time streamlines operations with intuitive budgeting, project management, and invoicing solutions. Schedule your tour of the #1 rated professional services automation software at bigtime.net. All right, now I'd like to welcome on our guest for today's episode of the Civil Engineering CEO. Leia Lorelle is the CEO of Capital Engineering and Consulting. Iris, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Iris, tell our listeners a little bit about your company, where you're located, what you do, how many employees you have.
Sure. Okay. We're a relatively small firm, and I always like to tell people that we're lean and mighty. So we handle projects of all size, anywhere from, the small stormwater project for a residential client on up to, say, a $200 million project for larger entities. We have about, we have three licensed civil engineers. We have one designer, one admin person. So, 5 to 6 people, depending on what we have going on. And we're actually hiring right now. So if this gets out to somebody who's interested in coming to work with us, please apply. We have an active LinkedIn ad. But Capital started in 2013. And we were originally founded by myself and a friend and previous business partner, Janet Turner, who now has her own firm up in Portland, Oregon.
Where are you located?
Oh, thank you. Eugene, Oregon. And we serve all of Oregon, but we hire for talent and not logistics. And so when I founded the firm in 2013, I intentionally set it up as a all remote business model. And I remember at that time when I had, certain colleagues, they looked at me like I was crazy, and how nobody's going to take you seriously. What are you doing? This is ridiculous. And it's kind of funny now in the pandemic era. Like, not a problem. Hasn't been an issue. We had no transition during the pandemic. It was like, just keep on cruising. Already set up.
Yeah, you were visionary in having a remote civil engineering company. I know that the word in the industry has been for a long time, like, oh, civil engineering, we can't go remote. It's just too complicated. It's very traditional. There's lots of paper. And then, of course, in March 2020, kind of overnight, how many civil engineering companies went all remote. So it's interesting to hear that. But talk to us about kind of how you got to where you are today with the company. I know with any business, regardless of how many employees you have, there's always challenges that you have to face in growing a business. And obviously, you've been going since 2013, so you're still around, you're still growing, you're hiring. Talk to us a little bit about your journey and maybe some of the challenges you faced.
Yeah. When I left the previous firm to start Capital, it was a little bit of a contentious situation, and I was leaving a bit of a toxic environment. And it wasn't this really well planned out, long journey of like building the idea of capital. And so it happened pretty quickly. Like, I need to get out of this certain situation and I'm going to start this firm. And in the beginning, we had a non-solicitation agreement. So this might appeal to other people who might be in similar situations where, who can you talk to? Who can you call? So we had legal issues surrounding that. And we had to be very cautious about who we could contact, how we spoke to them about work. And we honestly just reached out to every person we possibly could legally and just met with everybody. And we attended every industry function. And we just kept, hitting the pavement. And once work started coming in the door, it took about 3 months after we were really out there to land our first contract. And once people knew we were out there, there was a little bit of loyalty issue that some clients felt surrounding, we don't want to work with them because there's this issue, But once people realized that we were here to stay, and there were some folks who really loved working with us, Janet and I, work just kept rolling in the door. And then we became well established over several years. And again, people started just understanding that we weren't just going away. It wasn't, they could trust us to be there. We were here long term. And I think when I really felt like I arrived was when a colleague at the University of Oregon, I'll name drop her here. It's not really a name drop, but I just love her. So her name's Charlene Lindsay. She brought us into the University of Oregon Jane Sanders Stadium project. And that was a really high profile project. And to be trusted with that, it helped build confidence for us, and our client base kept building, and we just kept growing. People liked the work and they liked who they were working with. And yeah, it's an animal all on its own now.
That's great. And I think really that last point there just reinforces to me what, civil engineering is about, which is about people and relationship building, especially when you're growing a business. And, like you said, people sort of got to know you and knew that you were going to be around for a while, and you're doing good work and you're here to stay. And I think that is important for those of you out there that are either, building civil engineering firms, or maybe you're considering starting your own firm. That relationship factor is such a big factor in terms of being able to sustain and grow a firm over a long period of time, for sure. So Iris, what would your staff say is your management style if we asked them?
So I don't like to assume these things. And so I thought, I'm not going to just make something up. So I asked a couple of them, and something that came up consistently was collaborative. And another one that came up consistently was a non-micromanager. So I trust my staff. And another one that came up consistently was just trusting the process, trusting that we're doing good work, believing in ourselves, that we're taking good care of our clients, that they will want to work with us again, and stopping the frantic chase and just letting there be this symbiotic relationship between the good work that we do, the good work we want to do, and how we want to take care of our clients, and trusting that they'll want to keep working with us. And that feels much, much more peaceful for the company, for me, for staff. It's taken years to get to this place, and it's working much better than the chase. That didn't feel as peaceful.
That's great. And talk a little bit more about, trusting your staff. I think one of the challenges for leaders in engineering, all engineering, not just civil engineering, is, a lot of us start our careers heavy into the details of engineering calculations and reports and software. And then one day, we are told that we're a manager and now we need to kind of lead people and we need to give them a lot of the technical work that we used to be doing. And it's not that easy for us to do. So talk about kind of your philosophy and, trusting in your staff. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I've always strongly believed that a company can't grow without people working in it who have the skill to delegate. And being able to delegate takes the ability to trust. And I may go deep here, deeper than you want to go, but I can speak to my own situation that I sought out engineering because of trauma, childhood developmental trauma. I needed in a very chaotic childhood environment, I needed to create something in my life that was very black and white. And engineering gave me that. And so coming from a pretty traumatic background, it was difficult to trust. And for people out there who struggle with trust as well, I would say don't give up. Keep leaning into the process. And it takes time. Like there's a reason when we don't trust, there's a reason in ourselves for it. And so just sit with it, try to listen in, understand why. And if somebody's able to play with that and work with that, it's just a process and it doesn't happen overnight. And it's hiring good people. And that in and of itself takes trusting oneself, our intuition, so that when we're meeting with somebody and there's this giant red flag going off that they're not a good fit, trusting ourselves to say, no, I can walk away from this and somebody who's a good fit will show up. And then once they do show up, letting go. And again, I can't say it enough. It's a process and it takes time. And it's not just about trusting others. The trusting of oneself develops at the same time.
That's great. And, it sounds like for yourself, like you said, you turned to engineering because of some, childhood trauma, and you were able to trust in engineering, trust your staff. So, obviously, like you said, it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight, but, I think Iris, if anything, is proof here that, you can trust others. I agree. I think it does come with trusting yourself at first. And you're going to have to say, like, listen, I may give someone something to do. They may get it wrong. It's part of the process, right? And,
Absolutely.
you've got to help them, guide them, get them back on track, show them how to do it the right way. And then it's going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's a lot better than trying to do everything yourself, especially when you're growing a company.
Well, and I can say that it's impossible. It almost broke me because of the lack of trust issue and believing I had to take care of everything by myself, and it's just impossible. And the growth of the company came with the trust. And I'd like to speak a little bit to the point you made about handing out, starting to delegate with small tasks, maybe with more junior staff or even with senior staff as we're learning to trust ourselves, to trust others. And a big part of that is being someone who others can feel safe coming to with any question, any issue, whether personal or business related. They don't feel the need to hide that they maybe made a mistake, just complete transparency and knowing that there's safety in coming to their mentors or leadership team. And that's been really big in just creating that container, creating an environment where staff feel comfortable bringing things up where to them, they're thinking they might be asking a stupid question. that's one of my least favorite things, is when somebody's like, this might be a really stupid question. And it's like, no, we were all there once. It's all good. Bring it in. Let's learn,
Yeah, no, that's great. And what I really like about that is that also as a leader, people are looking at what you do and they're kind of learning from that. So if you're trusting other people within the company, and I think as the company grows, it makes it easy for the next line of managers and leaders in the company to do the same thing, because you're the example that they're following. And so I think we need to all remember that. I mean, it's always easier to say, hey, I'm just going to do it myself. It's quicker, it's easier. I know how I want to do it. But as a company grows, that just doesn't work anymore, because you're just going to, like Ira said, you're going to burn yourself out. And then you're going to need the next, like I said, the next managers are they're going to start getting busy, and they're going to start getting burnt out unless they're able to then trust and delegate. And I think, you're showing them how to do it, essentially.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, people do what they see, not what they're told. And so if I don't model delegation, staff won't do it.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah.
So that being said, I think that this next question still in the same topic area. You are a leader as a firm owner. People are looking at you, and the way I think that you react to things certainly sends messages to your team, to your clients, to others that you interact with. So you yourself, we've gone through a bit of a roller coaster ride here the last few years in terms of COVID, and there's infrastructure work and people are busy. How do you try to, kind of stay even keeled, not overreact or underreact, or, as a leader, knowing people are looking at you, how do you try to just, keep as calm as you can in these situations?
Yeah, that is a great question, because things can get really dicey when there's schedules and a ton of money on the line and pressure. I think it's something for me I've cultivated. I used to be constantly in fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. And it's just, I picked up a daily meditation and yoga habit, and starting in 2016, and just stuck with it. And it was monumentally life-changing in terms of being able to calm my nervous system down, not take everything personally. And so when those really big things happen or stressful things happen, I'm able to just observe and notice what's happening within myself if there's chaos, and realize, and I can see the other person, what might be happening for them, be able to have compassion for what their situation might be. And I think holding space for both of those experiences is really key, so that I'm not dumping my stuff onto another group or another person, and I can stay calm in the face of somebody who may be struggling, and not adding to their struggle. And I think that's about it, and just being able to step away, set boundaries, and if I'm getting dysregulated, be able to speak up for myself and say, hey, I need to finish this conversation another time. Could we reconnect at another time? And being able to do that before I maybe, blow a fuse.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I also picked up meditation about 5 years ago at the recommendation of a guest on a podcast. And, I do some yoga as well. And I will say that what's great about the meditation is that it really can help you to slow things down internally. And I think that, and I've tried to convince people to do it, and they often say, oh, I can't do that. I can't sit still that long. And I think the message is that you can't do it in the beginning. I mean, really, most people that turn to meditation can't do it in the beginning. It's very difficult for the first month or two, however long you can stick with it. But once you stick with it, what you will find, and what I found, is it definitely slows things down for you. So like Ira said, if you get into a situation or a conversation, as opposed to just reacting to things, if things go a little bit slower, then you may be able to change your reaction. You may be able to stop and, yell at someone and say, wait, there's a better way to do this. There's a better way to approach this. They're coming at it from a different perspective, and it allows you to really slow down. So, I would highly recommend those of you out there that have been thinking about meditation, heard of it, and want to try it, give it a try. Personally, I turned to this app called the Waking Up app by Sam Harris. I found it really helpful because there's an introductory course, but I know there's other apps out there as well. There's free apps, there's plenty of options online these days, but really it's just about try it for like a number of days in a row. You can't try it for one day. You really got to kind of cultivate a habit, even if it's a couple of minutes a day to start. But I do think that's really important, especially in the world we live in today. I mean, in the civil engineering world, there's so much work. So everybody's kind of like drowning. And I think any of these things can be helpful for you.
Well, yeah. And I want to add one more thing to that, what you just mentioned about it being challenging in the beginning, because for folks who might be watching this and maybe they've, dabbled with the idea of starting meditation because they've heard good things about it or somebody recommended it to them. I've had a similar experience where people have said, oh, I can't do that. I can't sit still. And to that, I would say that's what meditation is actually for, is to learn to be able to sit with ourselves. And so if somebody's wanting to give it a shot, just have so much patience for themselves. And when I started, I was unable to take one full breath. I was so at my max, my body was breaking down and I couldn't breathe. My throat started closing on me involuntarily at random times, and I could not take a breath. And so when I started, my goal was I'm going to sit with myself, regardless of what comes up or how much discomfort I have, until I can take one full breath. And when I started, it took me 60 minutes. And then it was 40 minutes. And then 20. It improved. And now I can just do it when I need it. So it just takes time and dedication to oneself and not abandoning oneself.
That's great. And it is one of those things, I think when you cultivate it, like Iris said, you can lean on it whenever you need it, which I think is really the value. It's really the value in it, because, you don't know when you're going to need it. And, it's nice to have a meditation habit where you're meditating the same time every day. I like to do that because it helps me to maintain the habit. But at the same time, there might be a day where I just need to take a break, and when you say meditation too, it could be sitting, but it also could be taking a walk, and there's different ways to do it. So, don't think that you need to sit there on the floor for an hour every day, without doing anything. That's not the way it works. There's lots of ways to do it.
Yeah. Oh, we could go down this rabbit hole. This is my jam. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I know. That's going to be our new podcast we're coming out with, meditation for civil engineers now.
Sign me up. I'd love that one.
All right. So let's shift gears a little bit here and let's talk a little bit about technology. Technology is something in the world of civil engineering, especially, is a big deal. There's always new programs coming out there to help someone design a site better, faster. You're seeing all kinds of things online. And with big civil engineering companies, there is obviously a lot of IT and resources and things that can help them with technologies. But when you have a smaller company, it's not as easy, I'm sure, to kind of keep up with some of these technologies and decide on which ones to use. So maybe you could just talk for a minute about, kind of your perspective on, technology and how you think about, the tools that your team needs and uses on a daily basis.
Sure. I like to take the approach as the business owner that new doesn't always mean better, more doesn't always mean better, and simple. I like to keep things simple. So for us, we use AutoCAD Civil 3D, the most recent version. We stay up to date. And things like Bluebeam, that, a lot of collaboration happens across projects on Bluebeam. And then we use the Microsoft suite of products, except we use Zoom for video conferencing just because we like it better. Sorry, Microsoft. It's funny. I've noticed my catchword, my filler word, just in the course of this interview. I've noticed it's I'm noticing I'm saying a lot. Logging that in. Let's see, technology. But at a deeper level, I'd like to say that the right technology is whatever is going to get the job done to meet the needs of the project, to meet the needs of the client. You know, something that's 750, you know, whatever, however many acres, it's going to be a different approach to, you know, a small little site. And so it's being practical and actually looking at the technology that's going to best serve the project. And yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I tend to agree with you. My own philosophy is keep it simple. If something's working, keep using it. Maybe you got to get an updated version, you know, that's fine. And I think, you know, I have a similar approach to you in that I'll just ask the team, you know, like if you need something, let us know. If you think that there's something that's better, let us know. And I kind of trust in them to figure out what they need and, you know, and how it can help them. So,
absolutely.
That's a good approach. All right. So let's switch gears a little bit, Iris. And I want to ask you a couple of questions that I often get from civil engineers, working civil engineers, and just see your thoughts on them. The first one is, what is the number one trait that you feel is important for civil engineering professionals to have today?
I'm going to do a combo response. I'd say high level communication skills, whether written or oral. And that ties into, for me at least, emotional maturity.
Wow, that's great. Yeah. And, you know, those things I think are very important in the world we live in today, especially where, you know, a lot of companies weren't virtual and now they are virtual. So, you know, that level of communication skills and being able to connect with people without being, you know, next to them is something that is really important. So I definitely can see how valuable that would be. Another question that we get often is from civil engineering professionals. They're working for a company, and the question is, how can I make sure that I'm adding value to my company or to my organization?
Yeah, that's also a great question. I've gotten that question before too from junior staff or folks who have been wanting to come on board or just mentees. And I always say, make yourself invaluable. Don't ever think that there's a task that is too mundane or beneath you. And this isn't to say that somebody who gets hired as a senior engineer should tolerate constantly being given administrative tasks where that's all they're doing. But what I mean is have a beginner's mindset. Be willing to do the work that needs to be done to meet a client's needs, within reason, of course. But especially with a small team like we have, sometimes somebody who's a senior engineer, they may have to fill out an administrative form in order to submit the project to an agency. And so it's an attitude, and just as much as they can, cultivate as many skills and qualities as possible, and just make themselves invaluable to the company, so that if there are ever layoffs, if that happens, nobody's going to want to let them go, because they have all these skills. Yeah,
that's a great point. And I was kind of having this conversation with my daughter who's in high school, and, you know, she's getting ready to start looking at colleges in a year or so, and trying to explain to her that, you know, colleges are looking at kids. They're looking at how well-rounded they are, you know, how many different things you can do. And she's great. I mean, she's smart and she plays sports, and she's actually started learning sign language, which is really, really interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And, you know, she goes to an art school. So I told her, I said, listen, you got a lot of things that are really making you well-rounded. So when a school starts looking for students and they say, hey, this person can do this, and you can, and knows sign language and knows this and knows that, kind of to your point.
Yeah.
Same thing in like a company, with an engineering company. Hey, you know how to do this part of the project. You can communicate with clients. You know how the approval process goes in this community, and so on and so forth. It's really building up those skill sets that can continue to make you valuable. So that's great. So Iris, what if one of your staff?
I wanted to add
ahead.
one more thing here. Something you said triggered it for me. Sometimes I've had parents reach out to me, and in the era of helicopter parenting and some parents being so afraid that their child might fail or maybe won't be able to achieve something that they want, I have had parents reach out to me on behalf of their child, maybe wanting to submit a resume or become a mentee. And I remember I was sitting with these parents who had set up this meeting for their child, and all three of us were at this meeting, and their child wound up having to excuse themselves early. And the mom asked me, I'm paraphrasing, I'm not going to get it verbatim, but was basically like, what is the number one thing that you would recommend for our daughter? And I took a bit of a leap because I was worried I was going to insult them. But I said, can I be really candid with you? And they're like, yes, please. And I said, she really should be reaching out to people herself. It shouldn't be her parents. And so if there's a way for her to, make these calls, make these connections. And it's one thing if it's a relationship that's already there and there's a connection being made, but that wasn't what was happening. So I would say if there's a parent listening or somebody who's more junior, do that outreach yourself. Put yourself out there, because the people hiring are going to want to meet them and hear how they speak, hear how they conduct themselves.
I think that's great. And it's going to help them too, to build their own confidence. I mean, it's just something they're going to have to do in their careers and their lives to be successful, right? So the earlier they can start that, the better, for sure. So Iris, if one of your staff came to you and said, what's one business challenge that I can solve here for the company that would make a really big impact on the organization, how would you answer that?
For me and capital at the moment, this moment in time, I would say anything, and this goes for a larger firm that has, where there's any kind of hierarchy. But I always tell employees, anything you can do to take something off my plate so that I'm not a bottleneck of reviewing, I can continue to secure work, and we can continue to develop relationships together, that's ideal. So it's really just taking things off of the busiest person's plate. And because as CEOs, we tend to be able to wear all the hats as we need to, if something can be removed from our plate, it just frees us up and there's less stress, and and that goes for more senior staff and junior staff, and just again back to delegating, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there's one less hat we can wear, that's a good thing.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And again, it ties into trust and what we talked about in the beginning of the interview, right? All of that, it all ties together.
Yeah, it really does. All right. So last couple of questions, Iris, I want to ask a little bit about yourself and kind of your work philosophy. Like you just said, you're wearing a lot of hats as the CEO, trying to grow the company. I'm sure trying to still get the technical work going and bring in more work. How do you personally decide on what to work on each day? Do you have a process? Is it like whatever's needed? Like, how does that look for you when you show up to work?
Another great question. It can be really easy to get overwhelmed because of the number of tasks that are always coming at me. So what I tend to do is just prioritize really well. And, when I die, my inbox is going to be full. So it's a complete myth that I'm magically going to if I own a company and I'm running a company and it's successful, there's going to be work to do. So I just go into each day and I look at, say, the top 2 or 3 things that are, these need to get done today. And then there's sub items, like if these got done today too, great. But I filter out the noise and I think tomorrow's another day and I can reprioritize. And I don't necessarily always get the top 3 items. And then that becomes a communication item with a client and just making sure that people are informed about timeframes. But it's really prioritizing and not getting overwhelmed by a 100 item to-do list. It's prioritizing it down to the top 2 or 3.
That's great. And yeah, I totally agree. In fact, I read a book called The Power of Less a few years back by Leo Babauta, and he talked about like most important tasks, like coming up with your 2 or 3 most important tasks for the day or for the week or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And I kind of have implemented that since, and that's been really helpful in terms of prioritizing, because I do think that's something that's challenging for business owners. It's challenging, I think, for any technical professionals, analytical thinkers, is you get a list of things and you just want to get them all done. You want to check them all off. You don't necessarily think about the order that you're approaching them in. And
yeah,
that's critical. It's critical. You got to do the right things to be successful. It's all about the impact of the task that you're focusing on, is something that I try to think about on a regular basis.
Well, and it's more efficient too, because our brains aren't really meant to micromanage. I know that, multitask. And I have heard a lot of people in different circles in the industry kind of brag about their multitasking and how little they sleep and these things that just lead to burnout. And it takes our brains, like 20, 30 minutes to switch gears from one task to another. So even though, especially as engineers, many of us are trained plate spinners, we have the capability of juggling so many things, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best or most efficient or even healthiest for ourselves. So if we're really trying to take care of ourselves, our staff, the company, clients, and serve our clients at the highest level, it's really about prioritizing and not overwhelming ourselves with just a million things.
Yeah, for sure. Iris, do you have a favorite book or author that you've read and that you've continued to go back to that book, or that, has been instrumental in, your practice, whether it's, personal, professional? Is there a book that stands out, or a couple?
I love this question so much. I read a lot. And so this question I feel happy about it. But there is one book that I consider my Bible, and it is The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. That book saved me in many ways, and it just helped me see so many things that I didn't understand. And it is well worn. It's packed up now because we're getting ready to move, but I wish I could show it to you. It's just a hot mess. It has all these flags, and I revisit it often because there are so many important things in it for me.
That's great. And I think that I also read a lot, and I think that that's really, when you find a book or books like that where you can highlight them, underline them, tag them, and come back to them. I mean, that's really why I read, to find the books, or 1 or 2 or 3 books like that you're going to kind of lean on for your career, for life, or depending on the different areas of career and life. That's why I think it's just so valuable. I mean, all that information. I know it's like new books are getting new books every day, and my wife keeps telling me there's no more room for books, but
right.
I feel like I need to keep learning. All right.
Lifelong learner.
Yeah, that's right. Lifelong learner every day. Keep going. So one last question that I have for you, Iris, is, in building your company and building your career, have you had a mentor or people that you've looked up to? And if so, how important has that been for you in your journey?
Oh, it's been huge. Yeah. So when I was in college, I worked for Branch Engineering. And at that time, a gentleman named Jim Branch was the owner of the company. He has since retired, and his son, Lane Branch, now is at the helm. And they have similar demeanors. They're both fairly calm, even-keeled guys. And I've always really appreciated that. And I've always loved how it didn't matter when I was at my previous firm or starting my own firm, there was always a very a high level of respect between all of us. It wasn't about competition. Oh, there's not enough work. It wasn't about scarcity. There was just, we loved each other as colleagues, and we still all work together in different ways. And there's Systems West Engineering. And these are local firms. So these are both in Eugene and Springfield area. Greg Langdon at Systems West. And I have a lot of respect for how he and the leadership over there have developed their firm, the way they approach the work and the way they approach client care. And it's been fun to watch them grow and change and like not stay stuck, evolve, let their firm evolve. And last but not least, I want to give a shout out to Miss Janet Turner at Janet Turner Engineering. She's in Portland, Oregon. And I have so much pride in the way that her and I separated our business. And it wasn't about making the other an enemy. And it was done with, it wasn't easy. I'm not trying to paint rainbows on it. It was difficult, and we got through it. And yeah, like we're both thriving, and it's lovely.
That's great. That's awesome. Well,
yeah.
Once again, Iris Lorelle. Iris is the CEO at Capital Engineering and Consulting. And Iris, I just want to thank you for spending some time with us here on the show and kind of sharing some of what you learned over your career and growing your company. And just thank you. And I want to wish you the best in your continued success and continuing to grow the company.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And thanks for reaching out. And this has been really enjoyable.
I hope that you enjoyed my interview with Iris Lorelle. The civil engineering CEO is really focused on helping civil engineering professionals learn and grow and become the best civil engineers they can be. If you like this episode, please consider subscribing to our channel here. We do put out videos on a weekly basis to help engineers become better managers and better leaders. I'll see you next week.